Hello, everybody. Wow. I'm going to just start this episode off on the right foot and say everything wrong. That's how just like sort of disgruntled and frazzled I am after this episode of Servants. Anyway, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Servant Aftershow presented by the Hollywood Critics Association. My name is Heather Wixson, and I am joined this week by my co-host, Rick Hong.
Hello.
And we are joined once again by Shannon McGrew from Nightmares Conjurings. Hello, Shannon.
Hello, thank you for having me back.
Yes, so we are in it now, guys. Like, we are one episode away from the finale. I don't know about you guys. I'm so angry after this episode at so many people. But I have to say, first and foremost, credits to Veronica, Franz, and Severin Fiala, who were the directors of this episode.
Yeah, they did a phenomenal job.
Yeah, they are the fiends behind movies like Goodnight Mommy and The Lodge. And boy, oh boy, this was not nearly as emotionally devastating, but just as thematically frustrating. So kudos to them for pulling off a great episode. But I am angry. I don't know how you guys are feeling, but I am ticked off and I'm ready to fight.
Do it.
You're ready to fight.
I don't know how I'm going to win against Leanne at this point, but at least her dad, I could totally take him.
I just like that subtle turn. It's great. Shannon, go for it.
No, I was gonna say the few episodes leading up to episode 9, I was sitting there thinking, maybe it's because I watched them all together, but I was just like, she seems to be weirder all of a sudden. She seems to have like this new control to her. And by episode 9, I was just like, wow, it's like a new person.
Yeah, we've been chatting the last few episodes where it seems like we are really building to this arc of Leanne as the villain, which if you would have told me season 1 that was going to be the case, I would have been like, you are bananas. No way. But she is doing some dark things in this episode, and I am genuinely scared of her because now she's kind of working with this whole agenda that I just didn't see coming. How about for you, Rick?
I was trying to figure that out. Is that like, did she do like her weird mind trick on that guy in the room? Because Dorothy had a great setup. She had a great idea, a great setup of getting Leanne out of that house and putting her somewhere where she couldn't, cause any harm, like just unraveling all the evidence, in this episode. And just that turn, just like that slight turn. It's like she goes into that room, walks out, and then all of a sudden, bam, there's just a big blindside on her.
I think there's definitely mind voodoo going on, because obviously we see it with Julian, because he basically shows up for a booty call that like Leanne's not even there. It's like she's in the other room. So I don't even know if it's like, if he's just intrinsically like, oh, I need to go here at this time, this day, every day, or how that necessarily works. But she's clearly got Julian doing things that he doesn't even know why he's doing them. And he even says as much to Dorothy. Like, he's like, I don't know. I don't know how to stop it. And I'm guessing when she went in with the doctor, Leanne did her little Leanne magic on him and was able to manipulate it, even though Dorothy's dad sent the doctor there with his own agenda too, which is equal parts frustrating, understandable, but still, I would like to punch him a few times.
He's very punchable.
Yeah. Like, I get where he's coming from, because obviously, we know that Dorothy went through some serious trauma with what happened to Jericho, before. And
which it sounded like they almost were going to bring it up. Like, I was like, is this it? Is she going to remember? Like, I was like literally on the edge of my seat. Like, I really thought like all hell, and granted, all hell did break loose, but I thought that side of hell was going to break loose. And it was very intriguing. I feel like something's happening up there, though. Like, I don't know, hearing her dad bring it up.
But the interesting thing too, though, is like I feel as though as long as like there's a Jericho, like a physical Jericho that moves and does everything, it may never connect for her it may never connect because it's like, because she doesn't, it's such a big denial, and the kid is physically there. So like all of a sudden it's like, I don't know how it's like when the kid's alive and in her hands and her arms and everything, she can sit there and just look at the kid and be like, and just deny it and say, what, who is this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough. And it's interesting because, Dorothy's obviously going through some things, because we even see her in this episode to the point where like they sort of wrap up the events of the night before that we saw in episode 8 after Isabel gets shot.
And it picked up like just right away. Cause like, between like 7 and 8, there's a little bit of a lull in terms of kind of like what happened during the day, or like one of those episodes. But like this one, it was just like, yeah, it was almost kind of like right. It was just like, this would have been like the next scene if you would have continued it with episode 8.
Yeah, it's interesting. They don't do that very often here, because we've had a lot of gaps, especially in this season, because we started off the season with it just almost being spring. And now Dorothy has Jericho in the baby pool in the backyard, which indicates some sort of summer, because it's, in East Coast, you don't put your baby in a baby pool unless it's hot out.
Freezing. Yeah, it's freezing.
Yeah, which is at least June, I think, because it's so the cold just sticks around there. But I thought it was really interesting that we saw like Dorothy was wearing the clothes she had on at dinner that night. And then the next morning she wakes up and she's still in the same clothes. And, she still got the hold of Jericho. And to me, like, that just speaks volumes to how far deep Dorothy is at this point. Like, I don't think there's any coming back for Dorothy. I don't think there's ever going to be a place where she's genuinely going to trust in like Leanne ever again. I think she's just too far gone. Do you guys think that there's ever, unless she gets, sort of privy to exactly what Leanne's been doing, like, I don't think it's going to happen.
I think she's like, I think like she's a few steps away from just like spiraling down in a place that she'll never, like, just almost like a fantasy world, so to speak. I totally agree with you. I don't think, how could she come back from this, especially because nobody seems to believe her. And when she brings it up, she's gaslit. So it's like, if nobody believes you, what do you do? And it's her kid. So yeah, I mean, I don't think she's coming back anytime soon.
It was interesting at the beginning of the episode, where, she's just so appalled and so just shocked at, because, Heather, you brought this up in the last episode about the looks between the two of them. And here it's like, they're discussing the look. She's like, how could you have that look? And, when Leanne's talking about something like, but I did it for you. And, or like, on some of those ends. And it's interesting to see that with Dorothy, she doesn't, that supernatural power that Leanne has, like, she hasn't like seen it, or it's really not there. It's really not clicking. And granted, we're viewers and we're watching, and we're seeing like all these weird things happen. So it's like, we have this idea of her having this like whatever, telekinetic ESP powers that she has. But Dorothy is just really just kind of just like, it's like you took enjoyment in this woman dying, not as opposed to Leanne using her powers to get this woman out of the way, and like Leanne even saying that to a certain degree. So that was kind of an interesting conversation to see at the top of the episode, and just kind of see where Dorothy's mindset is.
Yeah, I kind of think it's clicking for Dorothy though, in terms of Leanne, because you kind of saw her face when Leanne's like, "Oh, I did it for you," and I think Dorothy, like, even though she says to the doctor and to her dad, like, that, Leanne has these delusions of grandeur, I think in some small way, I think she knows it. Like, I think Dorothy knows Leanne's power. And I think a lot of that comes from the diary and the drawings. And I think she's really starting to realize, like, there's something, Leanne basically has everybody working on her side at this point. There is a power there. I don't know if she realizes how far it can go. And I don't know if she realizes the connection to Jericho. I mean, I don't think she does. At this point, but like, I think she's getting sort of caught up with the fact that Leanne can control a heck of a lot more than just seducing her brother, or, kind of winning people over with her charms and that kind of stuff. Like, I think she genuinely realizes, like, there's something more to Leanne.
I was gonna say, do you think that it's all telekinetic, or do you think there's other supernatural elements still at play?
I think that's what I think we're trying to figure out, right? Is she some sort of like a witch, Wiccan cult? Is it like is it a supernatural power, or is she right? Or is she Carrie? Is she
I also
Carrie,
felt
and
like
that's what it is? It's like
brief demonic feel, but I'm just like, what has anyone figured out what she is yet?
yeah, and I think that's a draw for all of us, is that we're in season 3 and we still don't know what the rule is on Leanne. We talked about it like last episode or so, when immediately she's just at one stage, like she's just on the porch. She's just outside on the porch and she turns Jericho back into a doll. Meanwhile, I can't remember her name. Isabel. Isabel is like, who knows how many miles and miles and miles away, and we see her get shot. So it's like, yeah, how far does Leanne's power stretch to?
Yeah, and it's just kind of, especially when you see her turning into this other side that we didn't see before, which is like much more, a lot darker and almost like insidious in nature. So it's all very interesting to kind of, because I was thinking that too, like, oh, is she a witch or into Wiccan? But then like she seems to have other magical power. I just want to know. What she is.
You might have to wait another 11 episodes to find that out, though.
Is there one more season? Is that it?
Yeah,
like,
that's what I mean. That's what they're saying. I mean, so as I made a joke last week, I was like, watch him try to wrap up everything next week and say like, oh, you know what? There is no season 4. This was the that was the twist.
That would be really mean. Well, it's interesting. Speaking to like her powers and stuff, I remember when I think it was episode 6 or 7. I can't remember which one it was, when Dorothy goes into Leanne's diary and she sees that ominous photo of that giant entity with like the dark beams and things like that.
Really?
And it's interesting because when I first saw that, I felt like that was something that Leanne had dreamt up that she is protecting the family from. I'm now wondering if this is something that she can conjure up and ultimately hurt people with. Like, I almost think that picture represents something that it's completely different than maybe what we expect.
Because the whole thing could be like something dark within her that she's trying to suppress.
I think so. I think it's like her own kind of like a golem or something like that. Yes. But it's always been like, where Leanne says like, oh, I'm protecting you and things, but I'm like, protecting them from what? From you or from, I mean, I know it's from other people, but who's going to protect them from you? So I'm really curious to see if that ends up playing out somehow within either this final episode next week or next season. But I also thought it was really interesting too. And I have to go and find my Bible so I can do research, but I thought it was interesting that she had the picture of herself, giving herself her punishment. And it was Jeremiah. It was in chapters Jeremiah 50 and 51. I wrote the notes down so I wouldn't forget. So I'm going to go do research on that before we get into our finale episode, because I feel like it's never just like, hey, we're going to throw it here in this show. There's a reason. So I'm going to figure it out. So,
and I got to say, directors, Veronica, I forgot his name.
Severin.
Thank you. I really thought they did a great job of like putting together like a claustrophobic feel through the lighting, like the contrast. And I'm just like nerding out, but I loved how they did that, because I really think that it gave us more insight into Dorothy's mind and where she was kind of spiraling to. And I just thought they did such a great job with that.
Yeah. And I think that's also indicative too of where we're at the end of the episode, because it's a really well lit scene where suddenly now everybody's just like, oh, well, if this is how it's going to go, Dorothy, you're going to start taking meds. Leanne's going to take the baby, or we're going to commit you. And all of a sudden it's like, she has no choice but to do this. So therefore she has no choice but to go into this quote unquote light. Otherwise, she loses everything.
Yeah, I was laughing when they're like, here, we're going to have a thing of trazodone. And I was like, girl, you're about to sleep for like 7 days. Well, I used to be on trazodone.
So, I mean, are we getting to the stage of where, right, it's turning into Dorothy versus Leanne. So now are we really at the stage of like, Leanne is evil And because before it was always the wonder and the awe of her, I've said it all season long, she's sweet, she's sexy, she's a seductress, she's all these like things. But now it's clear, like the evil is like, coming and coming and coming. So it's just like, are we to the stage of where we have to start rooting for Dorothy to figure out how Dorothy can really rid herself of Leanne? Because we've seen her, just try to do the nice thing and say, we'll give you these dance classes. And then we see the mean thing of like, let me commit you. And now there's only one thing left. And the only one thing left is I need to kill you. I mean, I think like when you get to that stage, so like I'm trying to figure out, it's like, are we at the stage of like, as annoying as Dorothy is, and as a brilliant actress as Lauren Ambrose has been in this, it's like, are we starting to get to the stage of like, for the setup of whether it's this finale or season 4 of, rooting for Dorothy in just the ultimate like Dorothy versus Leanne scenario?
Yeah. Absolutely. I don't think you can have 2 alpha females fighting it out, and that somebody's going to have to back down.
Yeah, I do think, and it's interesting because if you think about it, especially like how I'm guessing most of us felt about Dorothy in season 2, while she's got Leanne locked up in the attic and things like that, like Dorothy was she was kind of the villain of season 2 in a lot of ways, even though there was something, driving her in those decision, that decision to do those things to Leanne, like, she wanted her baby back and she didn't understand why she didn't have it. And she thought Leanne, she knew Leanne was tied to Jericho in some way. And now, I mean, especially after this episode where I'm just like, I feel horrible for Dorothy. She's got, she's basically being fed drugs. She has nobody left to trust. She's got this nanny who's basically moved into her house and kind of taken over her home. She's got everybody convinced that she's crazy. She is alone for the first time, really, in this entire series, where it's Dorothy kind of against everybody else, except Sean. I think there's that key scene early in the episode when Sean tries to make her breakfast and she wouldn't eat it, and then we get the maggots in the cereal. But right before that, I wrote this down. Dorothy asks him, where do you stand, Sean? And he says, with you always. And we see that at the end of this, where everybody is kind of like, well, maybe Dorothy does need help. And Sean's like, wait, now hold on. And he's in that moment the only person who's actually advocating for her. So I think ultimately Sean is still the only one I think that's still on Dorothy's side. I think even Julian, just because he remembers the fallout of what happened with Jericho the first time, I think he's mad about the scenario, but I think he's still a little bit like, my sister's in some trouble here.
Well, Julian's kind of like, he's more angry at his father, because he keeps, just making all these like derogatory comments towards his father or whatever. So obviously it's like, when you want more ammo, if you're angry at your father, right, you join with your sister, your sibling to gang up on your old man who, he doesn't like, who definitely, thinks it's dates like young women and other things and all this other stuff. But yeah, with Sean, it's like, I don't think it'll happen in the next episode, but definitely like next season. Yeah, it's going to be Dorothy versus Leanne, but then let's see like how Sean comes into that equation and starts to turn, knowing that Sean knows like the story with what happens with Jericho. If you go up against Leanne, go ahead, Shannon.
All right, I think like an episode like this, especially before the finale and leading into the last season, I think you're absolutely right. Like, I think everybody's going to be it's going to be at like a boiling point. So everything's going to explode. He's going to have to make a decision. Is he really for Dorothy? Is he, and it's like, I think that's what's going to be super exciting to see what happened in this episode as it then unfolds into the next one to bring us to season 4, because I think this one was a really important one to kind of show her autonomy being taken away.
Yeah, I think especially early on in this season, like the first couple episodes was like all these like shots of like Leanne like looking out the windows and being paranoid and constantly having to be like aware of her surroundings, where this episode, that was Dorothy through and through. Like the tables have completely changed. Where like, now it's shots of Dorothy looking out and watching the video cameras and figuring out where Leanne is. And it's really striking to see how much the show has changed in just this season, because I know some people kind of say like early on in the season that it didn't feel like there was a whole lot, like it was kind of taking its time, but it shows you that all these little things that they were doing in those first couple episodes are really paying off into what we're seeing now in some very interesting, and very clever ways. But yeah, I just thought like the whole theme of like Dorothy just being on constant watch and then losing time, and she falls asleep and wakes up in a panic and calls her dad at 2 a.m. Like, you never call anybody at 2 a.m. unless like somebody's died. Like that's usually like, unless your house is on fire or somebody has died. Otherwise, you don't call people at 2 a.m. I don't care who they are. I don't care if it is your terrible, rich dad or whatever. Like you just wait till the next morning. So I do. It's one of these things. Like I remember coming into this show and just being like so enamored with Leanne and just really like loving her character and wanting to protect her myself. And like now I'm just like, oh, like just even the way she talked in that final scene where she was just so underhandedly just sticking it to Dorothy and to the doctor and to Dorothy's dad, like everything seemed normal. And I'm just like, oh, you bitch. Like I was angry. I was like so mad because I think we've all been in that position where at some point somebody's undermined us. Everybody's had that experience. Maybe not like in this capacity, but I was just like, oh boy, you are officially like on my list now, Leanne. But again, and it's like funny because like I even like remember like talking to Nell at the beginning of this season and being like, oh my God, I'm so excited. It was so great to see you happy in episode 5 and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm just like, oh, how do you deal with this? Cause like, how do you fix this problem? How do you deal with this? We know what Leanne can do. How on earth do you deal with it? Because I don't know. I don't know how we do, move forward.
And I don't know if, okay, let's say like, okay, let's say we're in season 4. Let's say we get to the stage of, okay, she has to die on some end too. It's like, can she just be killed normally? Can you take a gun and shoot her? Will she die that way? Or will some weird superpower of hers show up? Do you need some sort of ritual? Or is the dagger the actual thing that she brought up to say, this is what has kept us scared? Is that the thing that they need to actually, kill Dorothy?
You mean Leanne or Dorothy?
Sorry, Leanne. I meant Leanne. See, she's doing tricks on me. See,
like, oh, you took Leanne's side.
Leanne's already doing tricks on me to say, you don't want to kill me, you want to kill Dorothy. Yeah, sorry, Leanne. I meant Leanne. Yes, it's like, yeah, but like the dagger, it's like that's what I'm saying. It's like with Leanne's power. I mean, it all stretches all the way. So it's just like, what do you have to burn her? I don't, does poison work on her? Like that's gonna be, see, like if that's what the outcome is, or whatever. And the other thing too is that I think that I thought about this episode was one of her disciples disappeared.
Yes, Milos. Milos.
Yeah, it was so subtle. It was so subtle, like what they said, but it's like, that if they introduce it, it means something.
I wonder if we'll see more of that next season, because I feel like we just started to get to know those characters.
Yeah. As
the season was wrapping up. And I'm like, there's no way that like, I don't even understand what that situation is. Like, are they magical people? Like, what are they? So I feel like there's no way they just threw that in. And like you said, having, was it Milo?
Milos,
Milo. Yeah, I know. I heard Milos, but it's tough to. But sometimes, like the audio, it's like it gets muffled a little bit. So it's like, did I hear that right? Or
there's no way he just disappeared and then we just never talk about it again. Because wasn't he like one of her main?
He was. Yeah, he was the one that came into the backyard, I believe, in the last episode.
Facial hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the one that Dorothy initially talked to in the episode when she did the profile when Sean was feeding the homeless. And he was talking about how he didn't have like money for medication and things like that. And that's how it led to him being homeless. But yeah, I definitely think that there's no way you can wrap up the cult stuff within the next episode, because even, the episodes are 30 minutes. Like there's just no way it's going to happen. But I think in the same respect too, like, I don't even think we've even come close to touching on the cult stuff either, because the whole first 3 episodes, it's all about the cult showing up, and we had the one instance, but we know there's a lot of them. So I feel like there's going to be some sort of payoff at some point, I'm guessing next season, between these kids, living in the park and the cults. Like there has to be something.
Yeah. Could it be that maybe that it turns into like, right, a Dorothy, Sean, maybe Julian snaps out of it, the family versus not just Leanne, but Leanne and her people. Like that's definitely got it. Like that definitely can't. I don't think it can happen in 30 minutes in episode 10, but definitely something like as a build up for season 4. Because like there's so much to explore with her people.
Yeah. Season 4 is going to be like 72 episodes.
It needs to be, or at least every episode should be an hour.
Like they're going to have that so tight to get through like cults, all religion, supernatural.
Resolving the whole Jericho thing with Dorothy. Like there's a lot to do.
That's what I'm curious about. I want to know if by the end of the whole series, if that baby's going to be real or fake. Because it seems like it could just go fake at like...
I'm guessing heartbreak by the end of this season.
Oh, yeah.
Season 4. Like I feel like... I don't feel like we come out of this show and they still have Jericho.
I think they take Jericho back to Target and get a refund. I say this baby's defective.
I mean, that would be such a great twist. I don't even think I'd be mad.
Did they keep the receipt? I don't know. Could you have like a 90-day? Like I don't know how the return policy is at Target
all these
anymore.
Conspiracy theories, hours of research, and they're like, "Yeah, we brought the baby back to Target."
Well, okay, so we are basically, this is the last episode before the finale. So for both of you guys, like what are you hoping we get out of this final episode? And I think even the final episode is only like 28 minutes or something like that. So I don't even think it's the full half an hour, which like Night, come on. Like you can't toy with us like in our emotions like this. But I'm curious for both of you guys, like what are you hoping we get out of this finale?
Shannon, you go.
I mean, I do want like an actual confrontation of some sort. Like, not saying that they have it like, one of those hard confrontations like between Dorothy and Leanne. That'll just set a fire what's to come, like just have an idea of what's to come for season 4.
Yeah. It's interesting because like you could have almost, if this was episode 9, like even this could have been left.
You could have ended. Yeah.
You could, watch like episode 10 just a blank. Haha. But now, and sure, that's like for episode 10, I mean, I would like to have seen, because like they introduced it twice, like the picture of like that ominous presence or whatever. It's like, I would love to see just if they could touch on that a little bit for episode 10, explain or like what that thing might be so that goes into season 4 as well. That's kind of like where I would be satisfied. Because this episode was satisfying as a cliffhanger already.
Yeah.
Yeah. My hope is that the growth that we've seen from Sean from season 1 through now, like I want to see that continue. Like for as much as he's sort of been Dorothy's punching bag in certain situations and how he's been, just kind of going along with things because he wants to keep his family together. Like I'm hoping either in this episode or in season 4, like we see Sean come through, because I feel like we're getting inklings of it. And I think we need to see him step up a little bit bigger. But yeah, I'm so, it's like one of the few shows where I'm like, I'm actually nervous. Like I actually get nervous about like where the story goes. And I just can't imagine what it's going to be like after that 27 or 28 minutes where you're like, oh my gosh. And now we have to wait until like next January for it to pick up again. Like, I need them to start doing like half seasons or something where they come back every 3 or 4 months. Cause
I'm always so fascinated by how much they can put into a 27, 28 minute episode.
Yeah. I mean, there's never a frame wasted in this show.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because at 28 minutes, I mean, it's not even like the thing where they decide to stretch it like to 34 or like 42 or 40 minutes, is to say, like, since it's the last episode of the season, we'll push it a little bit longer than normal. Instead, they're like, oh, you know what? Actually, we'll chop it to be shorter than normal end of season episodes are.
Yeah, they're going to torture us for sure. And then we have to wait like 9 months or whatever it is until we get more. But that's the glory of Servant. But I think that's a pretty good place for us to wrap up, because I'm guessing our finale episode is going to be a doozy, and we're going to try to bring everybody back. So Shannon, thanks so much for coming back.
Thank you, Shannon.
To lead us into that finale.
I'm sorry.
So, I said thank you for coming back to be able to lead us into that finale.
My absolute pleasure.
Yeah. And so where can everybody find you online?
You can find me on Twitter at Shannon McGrew, which is on there, and Instagram at Horror Design Chick, or you can find my site, Nightmarish Conjurings, on Instagram at Nightmarish Conjurings, and Twitter, Nightmarish with a 1 where the I is. Next time I'll just write it on here.
And how about for you, Rick?
You guys can find me on all social media at Rick Hong and HollywoodFirstLook.com. And also, if you like this show, and this show is, wrapping up, there are still a few more episodes of another great Apple TV Plus show that I am doing an after show for the Hollywood Critics Association called Severance, produced, directed by Ben Stiller, and starring Adam Scott. It's been awesome so far. Covered numerous episodes. So go watch it, catch up, listen to the after show.
Excellent. And I'm Heather Wixson. You can find me over at dailydead.com. Sometimes you can find me over at fangoria.com. And I'm only over on the Twitters at the Horror Chick, because I just don't have time for extra social media these days. So I can barely keep up with the one account. But thank you guys so much for watching. Please make sure to comment. Tell us what you're looking forward to as we get into this finale. Tell us your theories. I know we're going to go through all of sort of the comments that we've gotten pretty much throughout all of these episodes. And I think we'll have to kind of start dissecting a lot of those in this finale episode. But we do hope you tune in next week. We're going to try to have the whole crew back and get into what I'm guessing is probably going to be a banana pants episode of Servant. So thank you guys so much for watching, and we will see you next week.
Thank you.